My name is Melody Patterson. I'm 32 years old, and until last Tuesday, I genuinely believed my life was stable. Not perfect, not fairy tale, but solid. I had been with Evan Brooks for 4 years. 4 years of shared routines, shared groceries, shared exhaustion after long work days. We lived in an apartment I'd rented long before he moved to this city, before he moved into my life. It wasn't romantic, but it was real, or at least I thought it was. Everything unraveled during my lunch break. I was sitting alone in my car, half eating a soggy sandwich, scrolling mindlessly through my phone when I saw his post. It was one of those generic quote images, a pastel sunset, overexposed sky, the kind people repost without thinking. But the text stopped me cold. Don't let your boyfriend stop you from finding your husband. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, waiting for my brain to correct it, waiting for context, a joke, a tag. There was nothing. Just Evan's name beneath it, public, confident, proud. 4 years together, 4 years of holidays, emergencies, shared bills. And that's what he chose to tell the world? I didn't breathe. I didn't think. I commented one sentence. Good luck finding him. Then I did something I had never done before in my adult life. I went to my profile, changed my relationship status to single, and tagged his mother, his father, his sister. Not out of spite, out of truth. His post disappeared within minutes. My phone didn't. First came Evan's messages. Melody, what did you do? Take that down right now. I ignored them. Then his sister Claire messaged me. Melody, what's going on? Evan is losing it. I sent her a screenshot of the post. Her reply came back seconds later. Oh, yeah. Oh. His mother called twice. I let it ring. By the time I drove home, the anger had settled into something colder, denser, like a stone in my chest. I knew what was waiting for me. I opened the door, and Evan was already there, standing in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, face swollen from crying. But his eyes weren't sad. They were furious. You humiliated me, he hissed. I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door and walked past him into the kitchen. You did that yourself. I grabbed a bottle of water, twisted the cap. My hands were steady. That surprised me. It was just a quote, he shouted, following me. Everyone posts stuff like that. No, I said calmly. They don't. Not when they're in a committed relationship. You're overreacting. I laughed. It wasn't a nice laugh. Your post told the entire internet I was a placeholder, I said. A temporary obstacle. So, obstacle removed. He started crying again. Loud, angry. So that's it? 4 years, gone over one stupid post? And you had to tag my family? Good, I said. Maybe your mom can help you pack. I walked back into the living room and sat on the couch. I want you out by the end of the month. The tears stopped instantly. He smiled. No, he said. I looked up. What? I'm not leaving. I live here. My name is on the lease. I get mail here. You can't kick me out, Melody. I have tenant rights. There it was. The plan he'd already formed. He turned and slammed the bedroom door. I sat there for a long time, the TV humming quietly. This wasn't just a breakup anymore. This was war. The first night after Evan announced he wasn't leaving, I didn't sleep. Not because he was loud. Because my mind kept replaying that post like a neon sign burned into my vision. Don't let your boyfriend stop you from finding your husband. It wasn't just disrespect, it was an announcement, one I hadn't agreed to be part of. Like I'd been cast as the before in his glow-up story, the disposable chapter he could rewrite with a quote and a sunset filter. And the worst part? He didn't think I'd do anything about it. By morning, he was acting like the victim of my cruelty. He walked around the apartment with a wounded expression, sighing dramatically, making coffee like he was performing heartbreak for an invisible audience. Then, like someone flipping a switch, he became sweet. Do you want eggs? He asked, voice soft. I didn't look up from my phone. No. He stood there too long, waiting for me to soften. When I didn't, his face tightened. You're really going to be like this, he muttered, and disappeared into the bedroom. That became our new rhythm. Sweet, snide, sweet again. Then cruel. And within days, he found a new weapon. He couldn't force me to take him back. So he decided to make my home unlivable. It started with music. At 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, the bass came through the wall like a heartbeat that wasn't mine. I texted him once. Turn it down. He replied, It's my apartment too. At 1 a.m., I got up, walked to his door, and knocked. No answer. The music turned up. I stood there in the hallway, staring at the wood grain, like it might give me instructions on what kind of person I'd been living with for 4 years. That same week, he began inviting people over. Constantly. Loud laughter, shoes on the couch, half-empty drinks on the coffee table like little territorial flags. I'd come home from work and find strangers in my living room, acting like they belonged there, like I was the guest in my own space. One night, I walked in to see a woman sprawled across the armchair, scrolling through her phone, while Evan stood in the kitchen pouring wine like some smug host. He glanced at me and smiled too brightly. "Oh, you're home," he said. "I didn't even take off my shoes. Who are these people?" His eyes narrowed, but he kept the performance going. "My friends. They need to leave." The woman in the chair laughed like I'd told a joke. Evan's voice dropped low. "Stop trying to control me." I felt a flash of heat behind my eyes. Not tears, not yet, just disbelief. Control him? I'd paid rent on this place before he even knew my last name. I took a slow breath. "I'm going to my room." He called after me, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This is why you're impossible, Melody." Like I was the problem. Like he wasn't staging a social invasion in the apartment we once called home. But the real escalation, his big mistake, came a few nights later. I got home at 8:15 p.m., exhausted, and the first thing I smelled was beer. The second thing I saw was a man, mid-30s, smug posture, the kind of face that looked like it practiced smirking, sitting on my couch with his feet on my coffee table, drinking from my fridge. Evan stood behind him like he'd recruited a bodyguard. "This is Trent," Evan said, way too casually. "We're just hanging out." The man lifted his bottle at me like we were old buddies. "Hey." Something in me went very still. I pointed at his feet. "Get them off my table." Trent blinked, surprised. Evan laughed. "Relax." I looked at Evan. "Get him out." Evan's smile faded. "Don't be a jerk." "I don't care if he's the Pope," I said, voice flat. "Get him out of my apartment." Evan stepped closer. "You don't get to dictate who I have over." "I do when you bring strangers into the home I live in." "It's my home too," he snapped. "You made that clear when you tagged my family and tried to throw me out." The air in the room changed. Trent shifted like he wanted no part of this, but he didn't move. Evan crossed his arms, that smug confidence rising again. "I can have whoever I want over," he said. "My name's on the lease, Melody. You can't do anything." And that, right there, was the moment I realized he genuinely thought laws and rights were shields he could hide behind while treating me like a nuisance. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I simply nodded once. "Okay," I said. Then I walked into my room and closed the door. Evan expected drama, tears, a breakdown. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the lease. I had read it once when I signed it. I hadn't looked at it since. But that night, I read it like it was a map out of a burning building. Quiet enjoyment, noise restrictions, guest policy. And there it was. A clause so specific it felt like it had been written for people exactly like Evan. I didn't even wait until morning to start drafting the email. Because my landlord, Mr. Harlan, was an old-school man who hated conflict more than he hated repairs. He'd owned this building forever and treated drama like mold, something you eliminate before it spreads. I wrote, "Subject, lease question, apt 4B. Hi, Mr. Harlan. Hope you're well. I have a quick question about our lease agreement. My co-tenant, Evan, and I have recently ended our personal relationship. He has begun having guests over at all hours, creating significant noise disturbances, and violating what I believe is the quiet enjoyment policy for myself and potentially other tenants. Could you please clarify the policy on overnight guests and excessive noise, as stated in our signed lease? I've attached a copy for convenience. Thank you, Melody Patterson." I attached the PDF. I hit send. Then I sat there, listening to Trent's laughter in the living room, and felt something strange. Not rage, not sadness, just clarity. The next day, Mr. Harlan replied within an hour. Blunt, efficient, cold. "Melody, see Section 7, Clause C of your lease agreement. Guests are not permitted to stay more than 3 consecutive nights in any 30-day period without written consent from landlord. Tenants are responsible for the conduct of guests. Excessive noise disrupting quiet enjoyment is a violation. This is a warning. Further complaints will result in a formal notice to cure or quit being issued to both leaseholders. Harlan." I stared at the email, my heart thudding. Not because I was afraid. Because now I had something Evan didn't expect me to have. Authority. Consequences. Rules he couldn't smirk his way out of. That night, Evan brought Trent back. Of course he did. The two of them sprawled in the living room like they were kings of the place, laughing at some reality show, volume up, beer bottles multiplying. I walked out of my room calmly, phone in hand. "Evan," I said. He didn't look away from the TV. "What?" He needs to leave. Evan scoffed. No! I held up my phone. If he doesn't, we both get evicted. That got his attention. He turned toward me, irritation on his face, until he saw the email from Mr. Harlan. I watched the moment the words sank in. The color drained from his cheeks. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. You went to the landlord? He whispered, like I'd committed a crime. You said it was your apartment too, I replied softly, repeating his tone from before. That means the rules apply to you too. Trent sat up straighter, suddenly uncomfortable. Evan's voice sharpened. You're really doing this? I'm giving you a choice, I said. He leaves in 5 minutes, or I report a lease violation. For a second, Evan looked like he might explode. Then Trent stood, grabbing his jacket, eyes darting between us. It's cool, he said quickly. I was just leaving anyway. He practically ran out the door. The apartment fell quiet so fast it felt unreal. Evan stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as his girlfriend, not as his safety net, but as someone who could end this. He swallowed hard. This is insane, he muttered, and retreated to the bedroom, slamming the door. I didn't flinch. I sat down in the silence, the absence of noise like oxygen filling my lungs. It wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was the first time since Tuesday that I felt the ground under my feet again. And I knew one thing for sure. Evan had just lost his favorite toy. Now he was going to reach for something sharper. The silence after Trent left didn't last. Evan wasn't the type to retreat gracefully. He was the kind of man who, when cornered, started counting exits, then trying to set fire to whichever one you were standing near. If he couldn't control the apartment anymore, he'd try to control what was inside it. I should have seen it coming. That Saturday, I went out to buy groceries. Normal things. Milk, eggs, coffee. The kind of errands you do when you're pretending your life isn't actively combusting. Halfway down the cereal aisle, my phone buzzed. It was Evan. Not a call. A long text. Too long. I stopped walking and leaned against the shelf, scanning the screen. It was a list. A bullet-pointed, carefully spaced list of everything he claimed was his. The 65-inch OLED TV in the living room, the custom desktop computer on my work desk, the surround sound system, the espresso machine in the kitchen. He ended it with, "These were gifts or things we bought together, so I'll be taking them when I move out. Let's be adults and split things fairly." I stared at the screen until a woman behind me cleared her throat, waiting for cereal. Fairly. Not one item on that list had been purchased with his money. Not one. The TV was my performance bonus from work 2 years ago. The computer, I'd built it myself, part by part, over months. The espresso machine was a birthday gift to myself after a promotion. Evan had contributed exactly nothing. This wasn't about fairness. This was about leverage. He couldn't make me miserable with noise anymore, so he was trying to hurt me financially on his way out, trying to punish me for not playing along. I didn't reply. I finished my shopping, paid, and drove home with my jaw set and my hands steady on the wheel. He was in the bedroom when I got back, door closed, music playing low, performing indifference. I put the groceries away slowly, deliberately. Then I went into my home office and opened my laptop. If Evan wanted to play pretend, I was going to play proof. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it Evidence. It took about an hour. I pulled up my email and searched for receipts. There it was, Best Buy, dated October 17th, 2023. My name, my card, the exact model number of the TV. Then Newegg, Amazon. Invoice after invoice for every single component of my computer. Motherboard, graphics card, RAM, power supply. Then Williams-Sonoma, espresso machine, my card again. I saved everything, but the real satisfaction came when I scrolled through our old text messages. Back to the day after the TV was mounted on the wall. There it was, a photo Evan had sent me, him smiling on the couch, the massive screen glowing behind him. His message underneath, time-stamped 8:14 p.m., October 18th, 2023. Movie night is so much better on your insane new TV. Thanks for letting me use it. I took a screenshot. It felt grounding, like stacking bricks after someone tried to convince you gravity didn't exist. While I was organizing the files, my phone rang. Lena, my best friend, the one person who hadn't wavered. "How's life in the combat zone?" she asked. "About to get tactical," I replied. I explained Evan's list, his sudden claim of shared ownership. She scoffed. "He's really trying to take your computer? Does he even know how to turn it on?" "That's not the point," I said. "It's about control." There was a pause. Then Lena said, "Do you want help?" I smiled for the first time in days. Yes. An hour later, she pulled up in her SUV. Evan was out. something I knew because he'd posted a story on Instagram, tagging a bar across town like he wanted me to know he was having a great time. We worked fast, quiet, efficient. We unmounted the TV and wrapped it in blankets. We disconnected my computer setup, tower, monitors, keyboard, everything. The surround sound speakers, the subwoofer, the espresso machine. In 30 minutes, every high-value item from his list was gone. The living room looked hollow afterward. A blank wall where the TV had been, cables neatly coiled, absence where comfort used to live. I didn't feel sad. I felt safe. Once Lena left, I sat down at my desk and opened my email. I addressed it to Evan. Subject, regarding your list. The body was short, professional, cold. Evan, I received your message. There appears to be a misunderstanding regarding the ownership of several items in the apartment. As shown in the attached documentation, all listed items were purchased solely by me and are not shared property or gifts. To avoid further confusion during your move-out process, I've placed these items in a secure off-site location. They will be returned to the apartment once you have fully vacated and returned your key. Melody. I attached every receipt, the screenshot of his text. I hit send. Then I sent him one final text. Check your email. The response was immediate. My phone rang. I let it ring. It rang again. I declined. Then the text came. Rapid, misspelled, furious. Where is my TV? You can't do this. I'm calling the cops. I replied once. They're not your things. The police will see the receipts. Then I put my phone face down. Silence followed. Real silence. Not the tense kind, not the waiting for the next attack kind. The kind where the other person realizes they have no moves left. That night, I sat on my couch, the wall bare behind me, and exhaled fully for the first time in a week. Evan had lost the apartment as a weapon. He'd lost the possessions, which meant there was only one thing left he could try to take from me, my reputation. And I knew, deep in my bones, that was the next battlefield. It started quietly. That's how reputations usually die, not with explosions, but with silence. A friend who normally replied within minutes left my message on read. A group chat went still when I typed. An invite to weekly trivia night vanished without explanation. At first, I told myself I was imagining it. Breakups create awkwardness. People choose sides. Things settle. But then Lena called me one afternoon, her voice tight. Mel, have you talked to anyone lately? Why? She exhaled sharply. Because something's going around, and it's not good. My stomach dropped. What kind of something? She didn't answer right away. I heard tapping, screenshots being forwarded. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice, again. I opened the messages. It was a group chat I'd been removed from. Evan had created it. 10 people, mutual friends, his sister, a cousin I barely knew. And at the top of the chat was a message from him. Long, emotional, carefully worded. I didn't want to do this, but I feel like people deserve to know the truth. Melody wasn't who she seemed behind closed doors. These screenshots are just a small example of the control and emotional pressure I lived under for years. I'm not trying to start drama, I just need to protect myself. Below it were screenshots. My screenshots, but cropped, stripped of context. A message where I said, I'm not discussing this anymore tonight. Presented as emotional stonewalling. A text where I wrote, you can't spend that much money without talking to me. Framed as financial control, without the part where he tried to book a non-refundable vacation on our joint card. I felt nauseous. I scrolled. Messages of support poured in. I'm so sorry, Evan. We had no idea. You didn't deserve that. People I'd known for years. People who'd sat at my table, who'd celebrated my promotions, who'd trusted me. Believing him. The old version of me would have panicked, would have jumped into the chat, typed furiously, tried to explain everything all at once, emotion bleeding into every sentence. And that's exactly what Evan wanted. A messy public fight. A woman overreacting, proof of his story. So I did nothing. I sat at my desk, hands folded, heart pounding, but my face calm. Then I started gathering everything. Every full conversation, every timestamp, every apology he'd sent after accusing me of being too much. I placed his cropped screenshots side by side with the full threads. The financial control argument, his follow-up text was right there. You're right, I should have asked first. That was stupid. The silent treatment, preceded by 3 hours of him texting me insults while I was stuck at work past midnight. But the most damning thing, the thing that made my hands shake when I found it, was the audio file. 3 nights earlier, during one of his rants about the TV, I'd quietly started recording. One-party consent was legal here, and something in my gut had told me I might need it. In the recording, Evan wasn't a victim. He was screaming, calling me names, threatening to ruin me, promising to make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are. I labeled the file carefully. Evan, verbal abuse sample, DMP3. Then I thought about the one person who had never liked chaos. His father, Richard Brooks. We weren't close, but we'd always been respectful. He was calm, measured, the kind of man who valued truth over comfort. The opposite of Evan's mother, who'd enabled every bad decision with excuses. I wrote the email slowly. Not emotional, not accusatory, just factual. Subject, a difficult situation regarding Evan. Dear Richard, I'm writing to you under extremely difficult circumstances, and I sincerely apologize for involving you. I always respected you during my relationship with Evan. Evan has recently shared manipulated and out-of-context messages in a group chat with mutual friends, portraying me as controlling and emotionally abusive. These are serious and false accusations that could impact my personal and professional life. I've attached a document comparing the cropped screenshots he shared with the full, unedited conversations for context. You'll see that critical information was deliberately removed. I've also included a short audio file from a recent conversation. It's unpleasant, but it accurately reflects the behavior I experienced. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm only asking you to see the full truth and, if possible, help bring this situation to an end before it causes lasting damage. Sincerely, Melody Patterson. I attached everything. I read it once, twice. Then I hit send. Nothing happened for 2 hours. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Richard. I've seen everything. I'm handling this. I'm very sorry, Melody. 20 minutes later, Lena texted me. He just left the group chat. Then another message from someone else. Hey, things escalated. Evan's sister posted asking everyone to drop it. The smear campaign died the way it had begun. Quietly. No apology, no public correction. Just silence. The next day, 2 friends reached out awkwardly, apologized, said they should have asked questions. I accepted. But I didn't forget. 3 days later, I came home to an empty apartment. Evan's things were gone. His key sat on the kitchen counter. Beside it was a note, I hate you. I folded it carefully and dropped it in the trash. It was the most peaceful my home had felt in months, and I thought that was the end. I was wrong. The apartment didn't feel empty after Evan left. It felt reset. For the first few nights, I kept expecting noise. Doors slamming, passive-aggressive sighs, the low hum of tension humming through the walls like faulty wiring. But it never came. Just quiet. I brought my things back from Lena's place that weekend. We remounted the TV, set up my desk exactly how I liked it, cleaned the surfaces he'd never bothered to wipe down. We didn't talk much while we worked. There was nothing left to say. When she left, I sat on the couch alone, lights dimmed, and let myself feel the aftermath. Not grief, relief. The kind that leaves you tired in your bones. Life didn't magically become perfect after that. It just became mine again. Weeks passed. I focused on work, took on a project I'd been avoiding, went to the gym in the mornings, reconnected with the handful of friends who'd stayed quiet instead of choosing sides. I didn't punish anyone for being human, but I also didn't forget who'd believed me without proof. Evan faded into background noise, an occasional reminder when I found something he'd left behind and tossed it without ceremony. A flicker of irritation when his name popped up in my email autofill. Nothing more. Then, about 6 months later, Lena sent me a screenshot. No message, just the image. I knew what it was before I opened it. Evan's Instagram. There he was, arm wrapped around a woman I recognized immediately. Sabrina Cole, his ex-girlfriend, the one he'd once described as crazy, with a laugh that now felt rehearsed. She was flashing an enormous engagement ring, gaudy, intentional, the kind meant to be noticed. The caption made my jaw tighten. Sometimes you have to leave the wrong relationship to find your forever. I said yes to my king. I exhaled through my nose. Of course. Within days, the posts multiplied. Stories, reels, venue tours, floral samples, menu tastings. Sabrina tagged everything, like she was trying to prove something to the universe. They were planning an engagement party at the Atrium, an upscale event space downtown known for corporate galas and weddings that screamed money. And that's when something started to itch at the back of my mind. Because I knew Evan's finances. I knew Sabrina's too. They didn't add up. Curiosity isn't revenge, it's just attention. And attention is something I'd learned to trust. I did a little digging, nothing illegal, nothing intrusive, just reading. The Atrium's website had a public events packet. I skimmed it casually, then slowed. Payment policy. A 50% non-refundable deposit to secure the date. The remaining balance due 14 days before the event. Failure to pay resulted in immediate cancellation. No exceptions. The party was scheduled for 3 weeks out. I closed the document and leaned back in my chair. Something about the speed, the extravagance, the certainty in their posts. It felt familiar, like a performance built on assumptions. A week before the party, I had an idea. It wasn't angry. It wasn't impulsive. It was tidy. I created a new email address. Anonymous. Neutral. The night of the engagement party, I didn't go anywhere. I stayed home, cooked dinner, turned on a movie I'd already seen. At 7:30 p.m., half an hour after the event was set to begin, I sent a single email. Short, polite, vague. I attached one thing. The screenshot. The quote. The one that started everything. Then I closed my laptop. An hour later, Lena called me laughing so hard she had to stop and breathe. "You're not going to believe this," she said. Evan walked out. "What?" Sabrina cornered him. Payment hadn't been made. Everyone thought someone else handled it. The manager shut down the bar. She paused, then added softly, "It was bad." I sat in silence, the glow of the TV flickering across the room. Later that night, another message came in. Engagement party was a disaster. Rings gone. He left. I smiled. Not because I'd won, but because I hadn't lost myself. I typed one reply. Looks like she's still looking for her husband. And for the first time since that stupid quote appeared on my screen, I turned off my phone without checking it again. Some stories don't end with revenge. They end with distance. And peace. The fallout didn't reach me directly. It never does, once you stop standing in the blast radius. I heard about it in fragments. Mutual friends, secondhand comments, awkward half-apologies from people who suddenly remembered my number. The engagement photos vanished. The stories stopped. Sabrina went private. Evan posted nothing for weeks. No explanations, no lessons learned. Just silence. That silence told me everything I needed to know. A few months later, I ran into Richard, Evan's father, by accident at a grocery store across town. We recognized each other at the same time. There was a pause, a polite nod. "I hope you're well, Melody," he said. "I am," I replied, and I meant it. He hesitated, then added, "You handled things with more grace than most people would have." I didn't correct him. Grace, after all, often looks like distance. That night, back in my apartment, I sat on the couch with a cup of coffee from the espresso machine Evan once tried to claim. The city hummed outside. My phone lay face down on the table, quiet and obedient. I thought about the woman I'd been before that post, how carefully I'd minimize myself to keep a relationship comfortable, how I'd confuse patience with loyalty, silence with peace. I didn't hate Evan. I didn't wish him harm. I simply stopped carrying him. And that turned out to be the cleanest ending of all. Somewhere out there, he was still chasing optics, forever chasing the idea of a husband without ever becoming one. As for me, I finally understood the truth behind that stupid quote. No one can stop you from finding the right life, except the wrong